being conducted, like with the pre-test questions that they asked us. And it kind of got my mind in that, like, I'm a professional, and like Dr. Feathers really restated that we're professionals. We're going in with the teacher perspective, and like, so going into it, I really felt like this is a great opportunity to showcase the SPED program, like I feel like, and like learn from other disciplines like CSDS and athletic training and things like that. So that was really interesting. And my key takeaway was that every organization, department, or school of thought does a lot more than we like see on the surface. And there's a lot of misconceptions out there about different professions. So it was really cool and interesting to get that confidence to share with people across different professions. So thank you.
Well, I appreciate it. And I also appreciate when the dean comes back and says how well the SPED folks did. That it was highlighted. Also was duly noted, I don't know if you were asked, but all of you were dressed professionally. I like that. I like the idea that you went in. It was definitely noticed that you went in and you presented yourself as a professional, the program as a professional. What do you think, Grace?
I really enjoyed it. I thought it was a very unique perspective that I wouldn't have been able to get otherwise. And one thing I noticed that I thought was really cool is after talking with my SPED, what's the peers? I couldn't think of the word for a second. My SPED peers afterwards is that a lot of the same things that happen in my group happen with other groups. And by that, I mean, like when we read over the situation, my fellow SPED person, when we were talking about Christian and him ignoring, like not responding, we were like, oh, he's autistic, he's ignoring you. But then the CSD majors were like, maybe not, he might have hearing things. And that was like their first thought. And it was really cool because I heard from other groups the same thing happened. And so it's just, I really enjoyed it and thought it was a great experience.
Thanks a lot, Grace. That's a great example. We're looking at things from the SPED lens, and we're doing that very deeply, but there are other lenses out there. Who would like to go next? Go ahead, Sasha. And then we'll go to you, Chanel, after.
Same with what Grace was saying, and thinking like Christian would be ignoring because he's autistic. And we actually had someone who has already graduated and like works in audiology. I don't recall her name, but like no one had mentioned it. And she's like, I know one thing we're all missing here. And then also in my breakout group, there was a person in the athletic training field, and the way he was able to apply his position, like I wouldn't have thought of how it would connect to a lot of what we were talking about, but when he explained what all his position does and was able to apply his position to the case study, I just found it very interesting to see like all the different professional connections that can be useful in the environment. I just thought it was really interesting to really learn more and hear from all these other professions.
How would a little follow-up question, by seeing that there's different takes based on your different lens, your profession, how has that changed you with regards to collaboration, professional collaboration?
I think it changed me in the way I might look at certain situations, like Christian ignoring. It might not just be autism, it may also be hearing. Also with the athletic trainer in my group, when he mentioned with Leo's diabetes and him not living a very healthy lifestyle, but wanting to go out for, I think it was the baseball team and everything, and that effect that it could have on his mental well-being and his body and his diabetes, everything. It makes me think of like more professions I could reach out to for advice and help with certain students that I have in my future classes. Excellent. That I wouldn't have thought of before.
Yeah, so what I'm hearing you say is that it really is encouraging you to seek out the counsel of other professions, not just stay internally in our one profession. not just seek counsel of SPED, but to go out and actively seek nursing, athletic training, social work, those other professions, because they'll have a little bit of that knowledge that we might have missed. Excellent. Okay. Hey, thanks for waiting, Chanel.
Okay, like I really liked it. I thought it gave like us a good practice, especially us being SPED majors, and we do have and will be in like taking charge of like IEP meetings coming up soon and learning how to work with like other different professionals who have more knowledge than we do on their specific areas. And so there are things that we may think we know, but they may know it better, or they may take a different approach to it. And so like while my brain was focused more on Christian because that's where I have more knowledge or more information on, there I didn't realize there's ways I could help like Leo or what's her Kaylin or whatever her name was. Like we may be given information, but there's maybe information that we still need to seek out and search for that we may not have. And so I also learned that school counselors are no longer called guidance counselors. So that was a misconception that I kind of cleared up. So I thought it was a really good experience.
Yeah, like a lot of those assumptions were challenged a little bit. And I really appreciate, Chanel, you saying that we might be experts in our field, but that does not mean we're experts in all fields. And we need to be humble and go seek counseling and listen to that counseling and embed that counseling into our action plan. That's a great statement. I appreciate it, Chanel. Savannah, go ahead.
I was just going to say that, like, I found it really, really beneficial because in Dr. Feather's class, when we do case studies, like only one person gets to be the SPED person. Like everybody else has to pretend to be like SLP or the parents. So like I thought it was really nice to be able to go into a situation and like get to fully be like the SPED teacher, right, and like use my knowledge. So I just thought like overall it was something really beneficial. And I know like Caitlin, Katie, and I were talking about how we wish that it was almost required for like all majors, because like I know a lot of groups were missing different majors, and like although the majors that were there, it was like good, there were still things that like could have been better or that we felt like we were missing. So that was it.
Yeah, so it's a good wish list and it's a good segue, and I appreciate it. To if we can think now a minute, this is not a one-shot deal. Longwood is committed to this process. What would you like to see next? What would you like to see happen next?
I know personally, I think that for the future, like a more in-depth case study would be beneficial, because I know that a lot of other groups when we were debriefing felt like there was information missing. And so we couldn't help the family or Christian specifically to our best ability because there was information missing.
Yeah, and you're right about that. I mean, and what you'll find in the field is that's usually the reality. A lot of times we're operating on a little bit of information, but if we collaborate with other professionals, social work might know something we don't know about that case. So I appreciate that. Sure, Grace, what would you like to see next?
So one thing I just wish we had more of was just time in general, because like we spent so much time on the assumptions thing, which I think was really beneficial, that we kind of ran out of time to do the case study, because we were having such good discourse and discussion within that assumption. So just maybe a little bit more time or break it up a little differently.
Yeah, so maybe not make it just a couple hours, but maybe a half a day session, maybe even a whole day. Yeah. Thank you. Javion?
I thought it'd be interesting, like, to see next if like each group could have an active professional. Like I know that we're all supposed to be the professionals, but like if one group could have like an actual athletic trainer in it, and then one could have like an actual nurse in it, and like actual professions for each group to maybe bring in that perspective. Because I know in my group I had a grad student and she was an actual teacher and had been working for a while, so she brought in like a very different perspective.
Yeah, so we find ourselves hungry for, I want to know what nursing says. I want to know, when I go through it, the nursing was like completely different opinion than where we were going in SPED, and that really helped. And so we want that more eclectic, more diverse group. It's a good indicator of that can be generalized and transferred to a lot of situations. When you only know what you know, and you only hang around people that you know, that look like you and act like you and talk like you, then you have a very narrow view of the world. Being able to bring in and be more inclusive of a variety of different professions, genders, orientation, culture, races, religion, enhances your discussion. Always does. No ifs, ands, or buts, no matter what situation, always gives you a more robust, more accurate picture of where to go. Anybody else got a wish list or any other final comment? Sure, go ahead. Alyssa.
So like what we were kind of all saying about having each profession in our groups, my group only had CSD, SPED, and then we had one athletic trainer who didn't really say much because she thought nothing applied to her. So like that was really hard, only having CSD and SPED, because we only got those two perspectives.
Well, I just like that you're kind of waking up a bit professionally, that you're woke, professionally, that diversity, that the importance of that, having a variety of folks sitting around the table is beneficial. Without that, we're going to have a narrow view. It has nothing to do with SPED or CSD. They came to the table. They did what they could do. But when we don't have that rich narrative going on, that discourse that's going on, a deeper understanding can happen. I really appreciate that comment. Yeah, Jennifer, I'm very interested in what you have to say.
So this was pretty interesting because now I kind of have two different perspectives on like the education side. Now that I've joined like a SPED minor, I didn't really see any of my elementary ed peers, which I thought was interesting. I think that it would be beneficial for the elementary ed major to come in because I feel like I saw definitely a lot more of my SPED peers. So I think it would be, beneficial to get that general teacher perspective. It definitely was nice to kind of smash those misconceptions that people have had. But overall, I thought it was definitely interesting. And I really enjoyed the experience.
Yeah, great. I just really value your dual perspective. And what you're doing is that you're enhancing your lens by getting a SPED minor and bringing that in. And I encourage all of you guys to do that. Really bring in as many perspectives as you can. Anybody else have final comments? Sure, go ahead, Morgan.
One takeaway that our group came up with was not only that, we did talk about the whole one group might think that it's autism and one group might think that it's a hearing difficulty. But then another takeaway was that sometimes you can't do everything you want to do with the child. Like sometimes there's only a certain amount of services offered, a certain amount of financial support offered. So we really had to think about stepping back and listening to the other professionals and kind of identifying what was most important for the child, not just everything we wanted to do for the child, but kind of prioritizing what the child needed.
Yeah, I really appreciate that. In the time of tough resources, I hope a lot of you realize that, wow, we don't have to do all this. If I collaborate with social work, they can do the parent visits, they can do this. And we, instead of duplicating resources, everybody's doing it, but we don't know what the next group is doing. If we collaborate, we can kind of combine resources. And a lot of times we can, delegate responsibility. SPED will take this, CSD will do this, social work, nursing, counseling, and then the burden is not so great. And financial or time constraints is not so great. But if you just stick with your people, then something's going to drop. You're going to miss something. You just don't have the time nor the financial resources to do everything that's necessary for wraparound services. So Morgan, I appreciate your comment.